Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Gargoyles episode reviews. Today we are wrapping up Double Jeopardy. Xanatos confronts Anton Severius over the doctor's kidnapping of Thalog, except it wasn't the good doctor. Thalog is Goliath's clone created in Xanatos Enterprises Genutech labs by Severius and trained in the ways of deception and manipulation by Xanatos himself. Thalog is the ultimate psychopath. And a bit of a sociopath as well. And yes, I know those are not psychiatric diagnoses. They both fall under the category of antisocial personality at this point in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Anyhow, now he's about to meet his, quote, fathers. He's arranged the circumstances to suit himself, though. Those circumstances mean the certain death of all three of his creators, Xanatos, Severius, and Goliath. But what's his real motive? If you missed part 1 of Double Jeopardy, well, go read it or watch it. Make an example. Xanatos docks at the Black Rock Point oil rig and finds Severius waiting. David is wearing a black duster of awesomeness. It's like the one he wore over his power under armor in Eye of the Beholder. The greenbacks, those 20 million, make Severius positively giddy in a way only Tim Curry can portray. I didn't even know they made bills in $10,000 denominations. He exclaims. And he's wide-eyed, looking at the stack of money. Don't turn your back on Xanatos. He's lurking behind him, hands in his pockets. He might plant a tracker on you or make you an example. Xanatos is calm, dangerously calm. You know how he gets all relaxed and casual and will lean on the nearest wall or table or gargoyle when he's selling a scheme? Yeah. When he gets quiet, it's about to get real. While Severius salivates over the cash, Xanatos slips out of his duster to reveal his power under armor. It's pretty. I like that scene. Anyway, he says, Anton, I am not by nature a vengeful man, but your behavior has forced me to make an exception. Anton, first name, huh? Now it's serious. Now Severius is suddenly against the wall, 3 feet off the ground. Xanatos is showing his anger, which is rare. He's got him pinned up there, holding his front of his shirt. When people who are normally calm under practically any circumstances actually get angry, you are screwed. I don't know how much the power armor really enhances Xanatos' strength. I'm assuming it does a bit, but I could be wrong. I think it's mainly just the grip strength, and he's got the rocket pack on the back. So that's pretty much all him there with his anger-fueled strength pinning old Severius up against the wall with one hand. Severius is confused by the response. What? What did he think was going to happen? Well, he thinks now that someone is watching them and commences to overact yet again, delivering a monologue about how Xanatos stole his prize creation. Curie pretending to be Anton, pretending to be a kidnapper is hilarious. Now, this is the last thing that David expected, or I expected for that matter. He is stunned into open-mouthed silence. Again, a rare thing. Double trouble. They are being watched, actually. Goliath with Elisa aboard is flying over. Why the two antagonist partners are suddenly at each other's throats, or rather Xanatos' and Severius's, is a mystery to them. Goliath hears roaring and yelling. Opening a tanker bulkhead, he finds his double. The gargoyle is in chains. He says, Goliath, at last, I am Thalog. Thalog is Goliath, spelled backwards, in case you did not catch that right away. According to Greg, this came about after a mixed session where Greg kept hearing Goliath's name said backwards. Without knowing really any of the facts, Goliath blurts out, "What kind of abomination are you?" Well, nice to meet you, too. Way to make a good first impression. The double doesn't miss a beat. The same kind as you. I am dying laughing again. It was your blood that spawned me, he continues. Now Elisa, ever the detective, guesses he's a clone. Oh, brilliant. They grew him from you like a cutting from a plant, she says. That's not really analogous. He's a separate being, like an entirely, completely separate being. He's a twin. Same genetics, different personality, etc. Hey, she's a cop, not a scientist, or apparently a high school biology grad. Goliath is understandably upset. He says, "First Xanatos steals my home, and now he pieces off my very soul." Again, no. First off, you didn't own the castle, ever. Xanatos bought it. End of story. Second, Mini-Me here has his own soul, I guess. Xanatos didn't take any piece of Goliath's soul, at least. Look, there was no magic involved. Neither Goliath nor Elisa at this point consider the double's feelings. They don't see him as fully gargoyle. They see him like some people used to see slaves, like Irish and African slaves. Subhuman, or gargoyle in this case, and little better than an animal. Then Elisa has a bit of an epiphany. What does it matter how he came into being? He's, quote, almost your son, unquote. Stop. No, a clone is not a son. A clone is a genetic twin. Get it right. Goliath does not have any paternal responsibility to raise the double. I suspect the double is fully mature in his mind anyway. Xanatos and Severius are the true, quote, fathers, even if they don't see him as a kid. They see him as a creature, a creation, a project, a minion, but not a son. David spent far more time training him than most fathers spend with their bio kids, though, and Severius has made sure the double's physical frame came out right. Despite calling the clone an abomination just a few seconds ago, Goliath easily accepts that the gargoyle is his son. What? According to Greg, the scientific truth of Thalog actually being Goliath's twin doesn't keep G from thinking of T as a son. Here's the direct link to that comment. That's according to Greg XB. So thank you for giving me that. And the link is in the blog. Without any wondering about why Xanatos, in Under Armour, not the Exo Armor, and Severius are here on an abandoned oil rig, why they're having a physical confrontation, and why their creature is chained, Goliath decides to free the double. Hey, if the Antags have him in chains, he must be good, right? Yes, because Werefox and the Mutates were totally on your side, too, because they were at odds with Xanatos. The Mutates, yes, are on David's side at the moment, I admit. It is a mystery why Severius kidnapped the clone from the castle when he had plenty of time to spirit him away earlier. It's also a mystery why Severius is keeping him locked up. Does Thalag want to go back to the castle that bad? And why is Severius acting the way he is? This is a setup, but by whom? And there's Thalag straining against his bonds. And in the corner is a little canister. I spy something with my little eye that does not belong. Goliath doesn't have to unlock the chains for Thalag, though. The shackles weren't locked in the first place, as Thalag announces. He lunges at Goliath and clamps a face mask over him. Say, does this smell like chloroform to you? Rock and roll. We cut to our favorite billionaire and scientist. David has no idea why Severius thinks this is an act. Well, Anton got, quote, an electronic mail message with instructions. You planned every detail, he says. He assumed it was from David, or rather at his behest, since it came from an XE-owned server. Yeah, I'm assuming the server bit. You'd think Severius, who is wicked smart, would have, called David once or twice for clarification, or at least confirmation that it was him and not spam. Yes, the scheme sounds Xanatosian, but was he really able to do all this with zero face-to-face input from David? Severius doesn't have much common sense, I guess, which is kind of common for his type. Hell hath frozen over, for Xanatos is caught off guard. Again, he's gaping at what Anton is saying. If Xanatos didn't send the email, who did? Severius suggests Fox or Owen. He might have suggested Captain Kirk sent it, for all the consideration David gives the idea. Don't be ridiculous, Xanatos says. He doesn't seem to trust anyone, and he's the king of manipulation. Yet, he trusts Owen and Fox. He knows his people. One of his many skills is the ability to accurately judge character. Then he figures it out. The clone was the only person who had the capability of setting this up. Again, what is up with the security clearances you people are issuing? You need to keep a tighter rein on that. With some pride and a bit of irritation, Xanatos remarks, Kid turned out to be a real chip off the old block. And I know he said kid here, but he's just doing it kind of sarcastically. Less gloating and more getting back up, guys. Said kid appears. and says, indeed he did. All the old blocks. He slaps an electromagnetic disc on the chest piece of Xanatos' armor. It's like a taser. This shorts out the armor and knocks David unconscious. I think I remember seeing one of these in one of the later Halo games, and it's a disc that looks exactly like that, and it locks up the armor. Side note, contrary to what we see on TV and such, a taser will not knock you out, usually anyway. It locks up your muscles and screws up your thinking afterward for about an hour or two. But that's it. Rarely you might see a cardiac arrhythmia. Send in the clone. We cut to everybody but Thalog sitting in chains in the oil rig chamber. It's one of those scenes where you kind of wish they'd started the ep out with it and then worked back, in media res. And it's not every day that you see David Xanatos, Anton Severus, Elisa Maza, and Goliath in chains together in an oil rig. The gas that Thalog hit Goliath with is a Severus creation that leaves the subject weak for hours, meaning he probably had used it on Thalog, I guess, but I don't understand why he would need to, since Thalog had already been brainwashed into being on their side. Maybe it was just in case. So why hasn't this been used before? That would have been pretty darn handy for some run-ins, or just in case the run-ins went south. Thalog wanted money, so he cooked up the scheme of kidnapping himself. Pretty slick. Kind of like when Xanatos cooked up the scheme of assassinating himself. Oh, this is all very Xanatosian. He learned from the best, though, so what can we expect? Xanatos said that they could have come to an arrangement if Thalog had just asked. Just asked. Well, that sounds familiar. Oh, that's right. Renard said that to Fox. And there they all are. They're like hanging from their wrists, sort of, and they're sitting down-ish, but still hanging from their wrists. Like, just stand up. Stand up. Those chains are at least 3 feet long above your wrists. Thalog is no fool, which is as Severus and Xanatos intended. Too bad they didn't remember Rule 1 in minion creation. Don't make it smarter than you, and Rule 2 is like it. Don't give it all your trade secrets. He knows the deal would be on Xanatos' terms. The party who starts the negotiation from a place of power usually retains that position for the duration and comes out on top. Thalog hates Xanatos and Severus because they made him for the sole purpose of satisfying their needs. Xanatos wanted a stooge, and Anton wanted a private guinea pig, Thalog says. I don't know if he's right, though, because David spent a lot of time training him. And Anton, I don't know how much guinea pig research he'd be able to do when Xanatos probably wants Thalog for other purposes that do not involve testing. He can always make up some more clones if he wants to do some testing. Also, don't all parents have kids to satisfy their own needs and wishes to a certain extent? Alright, so basically this guy is a very evil Xanatos in gargoyle form. Trippy. Oh, his eyes are completely red. The whites normally are red. Now, we all know Xanatos is a fan of multi-purpose plans. He didn't go through all this trouble just to come up with one lone gargoyle. He had/has plans that are far-reaching. Is he going for a clan of his own clones of all the gargoyles, or a clan of Goliaths? I think he kind of wanted to pet Goliath, though. And there they are. See Anton's mouth. See Anton's mouth run. And it was running. And Thalog is done with it. He grabs him by the shirt, gets up in his face. The red glow, common to females, is in Thalog's eyes when he gets mad. Goliath tries to talk Thalog out of the love of money. He got too little too late. Thalog has plans, and he needs capital for them. Plans? That's not unsettling at all. Thalog considered cutting Goliath in on the goods, but he says, I decide to hate you too. I guess Goliath's temperament and view of Thalog weren't impressive. That first time up and calls him an abomination. Notice how he says he decided to hate Goliath. It was a conscious decision. That is not a common practice. Usually when you hate somebody, it develops naturally, like a hemorrhoid. As for why Elisa's chained up, it was simply a case of her being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Xanatos guesses correctly that Thalog means to kill them all. Obviously, Xanatos should have worked a bit more on the no vengeance and restraint modules in his curriculum, because this is anything but Xanatosian. While David's plans are dangerous for the protags, they're not aimed at out-and-out killing them. He's not a murderer. Heck, Owen outdoes him when it comes to full-on aggression. In fact, this backstabbing of enemies is very Burnett-esque. You can see the difference between how Severius faces death and how Xanatos faces death. And Xanatos is pretty much, ready for whatever comes at him, and Severius is clearly frightened. Thalog says the rig isn't empty. There were 200 gallons of oil on board. And he makes a huge deal of it. Oh, wow. Yeah, totally enough to blow the entire place. Okay, let me put this in perspective for you. A barrel holds 50 gallons, about, sometimes 55. So he basically found 4 whole barrels. Wow. Yeah, if you dump them all in the little chamber that they're in, yeah, that would work, yes. Otherwise, not so much. Run away. Fortunately, Xanatos also skimped on the plan execution module. And I gotta cut Thalog a little bit of slack. This is his first time. Instead of just offing his enemies on the spot, Thalog locks them in the chamber and goes off to dump oil all over. He'll light it up with a flare gun. Oh, I'm pretty sure that the chamber will protect them from the flames. It's got one of those big locking bulkheads, too. Steel does that now and then. It's pretty resistant to fire. Elisa then slips out of her manacles. Elisa's free, but that doesn't really help. Now she's just more annoying. And Xanatos comments, "I love a woman with delicate wrists." I don't like this line. It just sounds a bit crass for David. According to Greg admits that it was a bit of a cheat to have her slip out, but why even bother is my question. Everybody could just stand up. Again, you're not actually, your manacles are not screwed into the wall. They're on 3-foot-long chains. Then Xanatos could just pull the disc off his chest and pass it down the line to Goliath. They're right next to each other. Did no one storyboard this? So, fortunately, Xanatos' and Anton's combined knowledge of science, the gas, and the zap disc lead them to the correct assumption that they can hit Goliath with the taser and it'll cause an adrenaline dump. I'm going to hold my nose and pretend this would work, despite the fact that many tasers have the effect of making muscles weaker or draining their strength by causing prolonged contraction. If nothing else, getting zapped interferes with your thinking for about an hour. They've found that after a taser hit, you have the cognitive abilities of a 70 or 80-year-old. It lasts for about 60 minutes. No problem there, though. All they need him to do is bust through the bulkhead. So they hit him, and Energizer Gargoyle as the electric pulse goes around him. It's a good thing that that's more than a single-use disc. Alright, so he busts through the door, or the bulkhead. And Thalog thinks the roar that Goliath let out is just Goliath being pissed off. Severius and David book it to the launch. Elisa hesitates, but Goliath sends her after them. He has to deal with Thalog since, quote, "he is my son." Ah, no, he is not your son. He's your twin, your clone. It's not the same thing. And we've got a shot of the oil and the ripped open barrels. Yep, there's 4 of them. Needless to say, Thalog isn't about to suddenly see the light and come home with Daddy Goliath. They struggle, and they've got the flare gun in between them. And, of course, Thalog pulls the trigger. Thalog now is in search of his money, which he somehow lost during the scuffle. And there's flames and stuff all over the place. An explosion suddenly topples a chunk of the derrick, apparently killing Thalog. Anybody believe he's really dead? Anybody? Bueller? And there's a shot of that with Goliath yelling to him, and Goliath, champion of lost causes. Out on the launch, Xanatos, Severus, and Elisa watch from the safe distance. The explosion looks like it takes Goliath out too. In a moment that makes me die of inappropriate laughter, David places a hand on Elisa's shoulder and says consolingly, "What can I say, detective?" This guy never stops. And there's the oil derrick with a little bit of fire going on, and there's the launch out a safe distance away. Was there no backup plan? I mean, I expected to see Owen come in with the chopper. And there's Xanatos with his hand on Elisa's shoulder. He's looking downcast, and she has her hands over her face. This episode is full of "I bet you never thought you'd see that" moments. But really, how would Xanatos react to Goliath actually dying? He'd act cool, I bet, like it didn't bother him, but I think he'd be very disappointed. He would lose his playmate, his challenge, the thing that makes life more interesting. Plus, he just likes Goliath. Kind of like how Joker really would not like to see Batman die. But not to worry, we've got over 60 episodes in this series, and we're a long way from the end. Goliath surfaces nearby, and Elisa brushes off Xanatos' hand and snaps, "Save it." And I swear the water that is running off Goliath looks like he's swimming in milk. Because it's hard to animate water. It's technically clear, but you need people to know that there is water involved, so you get milk. David smiles at this. He knows it took more than an explosion to keep a good gargoyle down. And there he is, smiling along with Elisa, and Severus is looking not quite as happy there. When you get so caught up in the moment that you forget you're the antagonist. And so the happy ending with the protagonist surviving actually isn't something that you should be smiling about. As Goliath climbs aboard, Xanatos grabs a towel from a cabinet on the boat and offers it to the gargoyle. Alright, let's slow this down. Everyone almost died in an explosion caused by Goliath's clone, which Severus and Xanatos created, and now David's acting like this was all just a fun day out on the boat. Again, I am dying of laughter. I wish I could recover this quickly and smoothly from intense situations. Here's Xanatos standing there in his armor with his towel, and Goliath is really kind of annoyed, to say the least, at him. Goliath snubs the towel, in case you wondered. Hey man, a towel is the most massively useful item a hitchhiker can have. If nothing else, you can snap people with it. Well, who should appear but Lex and Broadway? They land on the boat. Next. What's the max capacity of this craft, weight-wise? Because you already got 3 humans and a gargoyle. And Goliath is not small. They blurt out that they found all kinds of info on Thalog. Are you idiots blind? They're sitting on Xanatos' boat, with Xanatos, by the way, right next to Severus. Whatever just happened probably makes that info obsolete, or at least far less fascinating. Note, David grew up as the son of a fisherman, so he's got some mad boat skills. Tag, you're it. This is later on in the day. On one of the castle's patios, Owen and Xanatos are getting some use out of the lawn furniture for once. It's almost a relief for me to see these guys outside in the sun for once. Always being in the castle at night gets oppressive. Get out and get some vitamin D, boys. It's also fun to see them in a different setting, especially a casual one. And that's some nice lawn furniture. It's very tasteful. It's unfortunate, says Owen, you couldn't prevent all that ransom money from burning up, sir. And he's got about 200 gallons of snark slathered on that sentence. Owen drops a report on the table for David to look over while he drinks coffee. Apparently about 20 mil would cover a new computer security system. Yet you're just now realizing you need a new one. The break-ins and metamorphosis wasn't enough of a hint. Yeah, I don't feel very sorry for you. This is like all those times I procrastinate on stuff and then I pay the price. I end up kicking myself for years after because I was too arrogant or lazy to take the 5 minutes necessary to address whatever the thing was. And there's Xanatos looking at the report. 20 million for a security system? What, is it made out of gold? Xanatos doesn't believe the money or Thalog went up in smoke. The only smart move in Thalog's position was to fake his own death. That way no one would look for his money. Or for him. Scot-free, baby. And there's Xanatos explaining this to Owen, who is sitting down, getting ready to drink his morning coffee. There's a well in the background. Like, where does that well go exactly? I guess it's just decorative. Then, in a moment that makes me love Owen and love his and Xanatos' chemistry, the security chief deadpans, "You mean that creature is still out there? It has the money. It's as powerful as Goliath. And it's smarter than you." Alright, let me repeat that epic line. It's smarter than you. That is a jet engine scale burn from Owen. Whew. Looks like, quote, the most brilliant man on the face of the earth, unquote. Hey, Fox. Got a little bit too brilliant for his britches, huh? And Owen's even doing the over his glasses look. No mercy given. What was Owen's take on this clone project, I wonder? When Xanatos happily broke it to him. Did he have qualms about David making Thalog so cunning? I would think he would. I mean, he's not all hot on the idea of having gargoyles in the first place. Now, the reaction you'd expect from any other antagonist or villain would be rage, or rationalization, or insults at that remark. Xanatos, however, accepts the reproving at the hand of his friend. Hanging his head in defeat, something we've never seen in David before, he admits, "Owen, I think I've created a monster." In the sky, Xanatos' mental image of Thalog laughs at his co-creator. I imagine David is thinking about his company, his family, his life. With Thalog out there, nobody on the Gargoyles' hit list is safe. This is like an anti-Xanatos tag ending. Normally the tags show how Xanatos won despite surface defeat. Normally he's cool and smug. He got schooled this time, and schooled hard. It's a humbling moment. He thought he had the overestimation problem whipped after he got out of jail. Well, it looks like you have to keep your friends just as close as your enemies, because they might be your enemies in disguise. So let's look at Thalog. He's a full-on villain. He's easily the match of Demona in that department. Gargoyles use a strong antagonist more than villains, but the villains they do have are terrifying. Here we have a gargoyle who's as strong as Goliath, but has the strategic thinking ability of an antagonist who's regularly 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Thalog is really a study of Xanatos, or rather his mindset and understanding of himself. Why? Because Xanatos designed the training that shaped Thalog's character. David's curriculum focused on training Thalog to make long-range plans with contingencies while also developing phenomenal manipulation skills. Technical abilities, like an understanding of computer science, also had a module. Of course, the drive for victory, hunger for power, and lust for self-advancement came standard. In essence, Xanatos created a creature whose ambition for power dominated its life. Thalog doesn't care about relationships if they don't get him more power. He doesn't care about hobbies. He doesn't even seem to care about having fun. Single-minded describes him. Now let's look at Xanatos. David has more restraint than almost any antagonist I have ever seen. He doesn't believe in revenge. He likes to have fun with his schemes. He doesn't jump to killing his opponents. The most striking difference, though, is his love for Fox. What do the differences say about David? To me, they point to how little he understands his own checks and balances, i.e., why he doesn't go further into the dark side. And yes, this is even still after Eye of the Beholder, and Vows, and City of Stone. A lot of his plans would have succeeded if he just killed the Gargoyles and or Elisa, or if he'd stormed in and taken them prisoner. Look at the edge. Xanatos claims that he framed the Gargoyles with the Steel Clan so that the clan would come live at his research facility. Now, if he really wanted them there, he would simply have boxed them up in the day rather than having Macbeth shoo them out. Xanatos wants loyal people, not slaves. He understands that it's more secure to be feared than loved, but he prefers the latter. Don't we all? But I don't know that he understands this about himself. I think a lot of his understanding is just surface level of what he would like to believe about himself, and meanwhile he's got a lot of subconscious influences. If Xanatos understood the restraints he puts on himself, and if he consciously considered them important. I say consciously because, again, if he didn't value them at some level, they wouldn't exist. He would have built them into his training for Thalog. This is why parents are supposed to teach their kids morals, so the kids don't go off the rails and be hoodlums. Another explanation for the lack of restraining education is that Xanatos is vague on how one learns what to do and what not to do. His amorality and general disdain for morals helps this. Most people are pretty vague about this. The average person thinks that you kind of know what you should and shouldn't do. And it's true to an extent, as we all have a certain amount of Jiminy Cricket conscience. But that's like saying we all have the natural ability to throw a ball or throw a punch. Yeah, we do, but unless you train a person in the finer points, that ball's going to go about 13 feet, and you'll see that punch coming from a mile away. Well, good grief, I hope the man does a better job with raising his kid. Maybe this will be a wake-up call. Now, I was talking to a friend and supporter on Twitter, that's Ironside Vernon. You can also find them over on Instagram at count_callus, that's right here. And I suggest you take a look at their stuff. And their favorite character is Thalog. So this little episode goes out to them. Now, we decided that perhaps if Xanatos had done this programming, this whole project after the gathering, and after at least after his marriage with Fox, and especially after having Alex there, and I guess this is a 2020 moment, that he would have done it a bit different, and Thalog probably would have turned out differently as well. Now, yeah, he probably still would have been an enemy of the Gargoyles, but he would not have been the psycho that he is here. Like I pointed out above, Xanatos really just focused on the pragmatism aspect and the actual skills of being a wheeler-dealer. And honestly, I don't know why you would put that much into something that you want to be your, not even your slave, but your servant or semi-friend even. It'd be really nice if we had Xanatos really be honest and lay out why on earth he did this. What was he truly expecting from this gargoyle? He knew it wasn't going to be another Goliath. He likes Goliath as a person, as Greg said, but he knew that wasn't going to be the case since he trained them to be very much like himself. Another thing is, you get somebody who's very, very, very much like you, and a lot of times you're going to be fighting with them. So, anyhow, final thoughts. It takes an amazing amount of talent to pull off the old evil twin/clone cliche so that the audience isn't rolling its eyes and reaching for the remote. As usual, the Gargoyles writers pull it off in spectacular fashion. Thalog is legitimately terrifying. He embodies all that Goliath and Xanatos could be if they went chaotic evil. If you thought David was dangerous, Thalog is downright deadly. If you consider Goliath a formidable opponent in physical battle, you stand no chance against Thalog. Now, I'll probably talk a little bit more about Thalog's character because he's very interesting, and Ironside Vernon and I were talking a lot about it as well. But that will have to wait till some later episodes when we got some more history on this character. Thalog is, in the end, more like Owen than Xanatos. Owen will emotionlessly kill you in your sleep and move on to the next task on the agenda if it will help achieve his goals. He's all about efficiency, where Xanatos likes to have some fun and even show a little mercy. Now, even if it is self-serving mercy. Owen is the first one to suggest flat-out pulverizing the Gargs. That was in Awakening Part 5, remember? Like the 5th episode. He was enthused about it back in Enter Macbeth, too. He's also the first one to deploy a weapon and point it at someone's head. The only thing that stops Owen is his boss. Xanatos meets Owen's ferocious efficiency with basically, yeah, let's not. Did you put that sledgehammer down? And the gun, too. Yeah. I once read a Gargoyles review that said if Owen ever, quote, went rogue, unquote, he would be extremely dangerous. Of the Xanatos-Burnett team, Owen is the scary, dangerous one. Now, I wish I could remember who the reviewer was. It was not Greg XB, so if that reviewer is watching this, hey, give me a shout out, and I'd love to talk with you. This is the shameless plug. I wrote a 4-book series that's called Unclean Evolution. You can pick it up at my website, lcchamplin.com. It's also on Amazon, of course. And the main characters in that are very similar to David and Owen. And in that, we get to see a little bit of how Owen might behave if he was let off his leash more. It's a zombie series, but as with, Walking Dead and a lot of the other ones, it's not so much the zombies that are the problem, but the humans. So, give it a look. It'll be fun to see what happens next with Thalog. And will Xanatos' near miss make him think twice before playing with the Monster Lab again? Well, I hope you enjoyed the extra snark in this episode. It's the Owen in me. Next up is the exceedingly creepy Upgrade. Ever wonder what became of the pack? Yeah, they're back, and they're willing to give their right arms for victory. And their left arms and both legs and general humanity. It's all a game for Fox and Xanatos, though. Tune in next time. So what'd you think about this episode? What'd you think about Thalog? Did you realize that Thalog was a Goliath backwards right at first? And did you think that he would become such a big character later on? So anyway, you can comment here. You can comment on the blog. Remember to like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you in the next